Every 14 minutes, there's a knife crime across England and Wales.
Just rob that guy with his bike, yeah?
He's dead, yeah, and this is what we're doing to support him, yeah, and look what they're doing. Look.
There's been a lot of knife crime. I've had 3 murders in the last
In 1971, a heist in London's Baker Street stunned the world. Lloyds Bank, known for its wealth and security.
Shooting on the 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica. Police say the owner of a sneaker store shot and killed a man trying to rob him. And as KCAL's Jeff Nguyen explains, investigators say this started as an after-hours private shopping session.
Was targeted by a gang of daring criminals who thought they could get away with millions.
Is that the only phone? No? Is that the only phone?
Within weeks of coming over to the UK on a small boat, Ahmed Ebid was organising for others to do the same. Originally from Egypt, he crossed the channel with his wife and daughter in October 2022.
He said he'll be fully compliant.
But this wasn't your average robbery. It involved explosives, a secret tunnel, and the clever use of walkie-talkies. What they didn't know, their every move was being broadcast live, as a radio enthusiast tuned into their frequency. This led to an incredible game of cat and mouse between the thieves and the police. But with every passing minute, the police were getting closer, and so were the criminals. Could they get away, or would their careless mistake lead to their capture? Stay with us as we uncover the shocking details of Britain's most notorious heist. Don't miss a second of this jaw-dropping story! The heist in September 1971. The quiet streets of Baker Street, London, became the scene of one of Britain's most audacious heists. Lloyds Bank, located in the heart of this famous area, was targeted by a fearless gang who executed a robbery that would send shockwaves through the banking world. This wasn't just any robbery. It was a meticulous crime involving explosives, thermic lances, and a complex underground tunnel system, all aimed at one thing: massive wealth. The heist was incredibly daring. The criminals had carefully planned their attack, knowing exactly where to strike. They managed to dig their way through thick concrete floors from an adjacent shop, bypassing the bank's usual security systems. The gang's goal was clear: break into the vault and steal as much as possible. But as they executed their plan, they unknowingly broadcast their actions over a radio frequency, revealing their every move to the authorities. This mistake would ultimately lead to a race against time, as the police scrambled to track down the robbers, unaware that they were so close to catching them in the act. What followed was an extraordinary chain of events that would forever change the way people viewed bank security and criminal ingenuity. Radio discovery. It was a quiet Saturday evening in Wimpole Street, London. Robert Rowland, a radio enthusiast, was preparing for a relaxing night in. Little did he know that his hobby would soon place him at the heart of one of Britain's biggest heists. While tuning his radio, he accidentally stumbled upon a conversation broadcasted over the citizens' band frequency, a type of walkie-talkie communication that was illegal in the UK at the time. At first, Rowland assumed it was a casual conversation, but what he overheard next raised the hairs on the back of his neck. The voices he was hearing were discussing large sums of money, around £400,000, and when they would leave the location. The more he listened, the more it became clear this wasn't some random chat. It was a robbery in progress. Rowland knew that he had to act fast. With the sound of his heart racing, he decided to record the conversation, hoping to provide the police with the critical evidence they needed to stop the criminals. Police doubts despite the gravity of the situation. When Rowland contacted the local police, his claims were met with skepticism. It was a late Saturday night, and the officer on duty didn't seem to take the radio enthusiast seriously. "That's very not good, sir. If you hear any more funny broadcasts, why don't you record them?" the officer suggested casually, brushing off Rowland's concerns. Rowland wasn't surprised by the officer's reaction. It was an unbelievable story after all. However, he decided to follow the advice. He grabbed his cassette recorder, preparing to capture every word from the conversation. For the next 2 hours, Rowland stayed by his radio, recording the robbers' discussions about the heist, their plans, and even their frustration with the fumes inside the bank. As he listened intently, it became clear this wasn't a prank. Rowland feared the robbery could escalate further, and he was desperate to ensure that the authorities would take action. However, at this point, the police still hadn't grasped the seriousness of the situation. Gang's conversations. As the night wore on, the conversations between the robbers grew more intense. Rowland, now fully aware that this was no ordinary crime, was glued to his radio, capturing every moment. He overheard one of the men complaining about the unbearable fumes inside the bank. "The place is filled with fumes," he said, "and if the security comes in, we'll all get caught." It was a desperate situation for the gang, but they were committed to seeing it through. Despite the tension, the robbers didn't seem to agree on the next steps. One of them wanted to take a break, suggesting they rest and return later to finish the job. But another, more determined voice shut him down. "We can't stop now," he insisted. "We've got 300 grand to split, and we need to get out of here with something." Roland couldn't believe what he was hearing. The robbers were arguing over their next move. Yet they had no idea that the police were listening. The conversations were revealing crucial details, like their location and the amount of money they had already stolen. Roland realized he was sitting on a goldmine of evidence, and time was running out to alert the authorities before the gang made their escape. Scotland Yard's dilemma. As Roland continued to record, the situation became more urgent. He knew he was on to something big, but he faced a critical challenge: how to convince the authorities that this was a real robbery and not just a hoax. After failing to get a serious response from the local police, Roland took matters into his own hands and called Scotland Yard. This time, he was determined to make them listen. When Roland explained that he had evidence of a robbery in progress, the officers on the other end were initially hesitant. But after hearing the recordings, they quickly realized the gravity of the situation. They were in a race against time. They had no idea where the robbers were operating from, but they knew they had to act fast. The dilemma faced by Scotland Yard was unprecedented. They were tracking the gang through a radio frequency, but with no clear location, they could only listen and hope for a breakthrough. It was an extraordinary game of cat and mouse. The officers were up against a gang that had meticulously planned their heist, and now, they had to find them before it was too late. The clock was ticking. The aftermath: by the time the police were able to narrow down the location, it was too late. The gang had completed their robbery and vanished without a trace. On Monday morning, when the bank manager arrived at Lloyds Bank, the full extent of the crime became evident. More than 260 safety deposit boxes had been ransacked, with their contents, cash, jewels, and priceless valuables, stolen. The devastation was unimaginable, and it marked the beginning of one of the most notorious robberies in British history. Despite the police's intense efforts, the stolen goods were never recovered, and the true value of the heist remained a mystery. Some estimates suggested it could have been worth millions of pounds, but the bank's clients, fearing embarrassment, never came forward to disclose the contents of their vault boxes. As the investigation continued, Scotland Yard faced the harsh reality that the criminals had outsmarted them at every turn. The aftermath left a lasting impact on the city's financial community, shaking the very foundations of public trust in the security of their wealth. For Robert Roland, his role in the case was both a personal triumph and a reminder of how close the authorities had come to catching the thieves. If only they had acted faster, the Baker Street heist would go down in history as a criminal masterpiece, one that remains legendary to this day. What happened next? Well, the gang's audacious plan came to a dramatic conclusion, but not before they made history as one of the most audacious criminal groups Britain has ever seen. But here's the real question: how did they manage to escape right under the noses of the police? Was it luck, or was it pure criminal genius? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think they would have gotten away if it wasn't for that radio frequency slip-up? And before you go, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next video, The Soham Murders, a town's nightmare that shook the UK. Trust us, you'll want to be there for it.